Do something right now. Touch the tip of your nose. Which hand did you use? You probably use your dominant hand, but what does dominant mean? Did you know that humans are not the only animals with a dominant hand? Several theories exist to explain why certain animals exhibit a preference for one hand over the other. Is it hardwired into our brains, or did we learn it from others? In this video, we aim to explore the meaning of handedness and investigate its presence in primates and other animals. With a 9-to-1 ratio of right hand to left hand dominance, humans are by far the most biased. However, in the past several years, strong evidence has eluded that several other animals, especially primates, display handedness. For example, male cats are more likely to use their left hand when retrieving food from a bowl, while female cats are more likely to use their right. Dogs, chickens, parrots, whales, and even lungfish have been observed to show such biases. While many scientists now agree that humans are not unique in the aspect of handedness, the reason behind this preference is still being debated. One not so widely accepted theory is that non-humans display handedness out of mimicry of humans. While this idea has its merit, the ratio of right-hand dominant to left-hand dominant humans is much different than the ratio in Sichuan snub-nosed monkeys. If snub-nosed monkeys were only mimicking humans, we'd expect these ratios to be more similar. However, these primates actually favor their left hand over their right 70% of the time.
Contrary to this theory of mimicry, Emory University neuroscientist Bill Hopkins suggests that handedness stems from the brain lateralization, which is the separation of the brain into two distinct hemispheres, connected by a structure called the corpus callosum. As we learned, through a process called decussation, the left hemisphere controls the right side of the body, while the right hemisphere controls the left. Hopkins' suspicions were confirmed through magnetic resonance imaging showing hemispheric differences in chimps similar to those in humans. For example, the difference between right and left-handed Yerkes chimps was due to the difference in the lateralization of the cerebral cortex, the area of the brain that is responsible for motor functions. Specifically, these differences arose mainly in the area of the cerebral cortex called the precentral gyrus, the primary motor area of the cerebral cortex located at the frontal hemisphere of the cerebrum that is responsible for the initiation of movements. Chimps that prefer to carry out tasks with their right hand had a more pronounced area in their left hemisphere, while the chimps that preferred to carry out tasks with their left hand had a more pronounced area in their right hemisphere. Additionally, Hopkins noted that chimps that tend to gesture with their right hand generally have a larger left inferior frontal gyrus, the language production and verbal comprehension area of the brain, and those that gestured with their right hand had a more pronounced left inferior frontal gyrus, the area of the brain associated with the go, no-go tasks. Lastly, Hopkins hypothesized that through evolution, the brain got larger and larger, and as a result, the corpus callosum was unable to keep pace with the growing brain. This could have caused an even stronger emergence of the left-right preference as the two hemispheres became even more differentiated. Hopkins, along with Silvia Pericini of the University of St. Andrews, agrees that genetic factors influence individual handedness. The problem, however, lies with determining what these genetic factors are and how they work. By conducting a study with more than 700 subjects defining handedness in individuals as an overall greater dexterity in one hand over the other, Pericini was able to associate a gene called PCSK6 with her measure of handedness. PCSK6 is a gene that codes for an enzyme that cleaves the protein called nodal. Nodal is responsible for a signal transduction pathway, the conversions of a signal from one form to another, that triggers the formation of the mesoderm and endoderm in early embryogenesis. It most importantly determines the directional organization of organs and the formation of the left-right axis. Studies conducted on the zebrafish indicate that nodal is only present on the left side of the brain. When activated, it causes a pattern of neuron connections in the left hemisphere that is consistent with the predominant right-handedness of individuals. If nodal was somehow inhibited, this notion of handedness would be suppressed and there would be an equal probability of being left or right-handed.
While Hopkins and Pericini propose a valid explanation for the genetic bias of handedness, Fred Biddle, a geneticist at the University of Calgary, argues that hand preference may simply be a consequence of our environment. Biddle determined that he could train lab mice to become predominantly left or right-handed through experiments with a specialized feeding chamber that forced animals to use a particular hand to obtain food. Biddle believes that his findings indicate that there is no direct gene governing handedness and that it is instead determined by genes involved in learning. Coupled with humans' exceptional ability to learn from their environment, social norms encourage children to write with their right hands, giving rise to the 90-10 bias for right-handedness in humans. It is clear that a definitive conclusion regarding the reason behind the rather complex issue of handedness in animals has not been reached. Whether it stems from the sequence in our genetic code or the culmination of environmental factors, the preference of one hand over the other is not as simple as it may seem. Aside from the squabble over the exact cause, the fact that humans are not alone in the battle between lefties and righties is pretty interesting in itself.